When St. Augustine of Hippo was asked, "What is time?" he replied, "I know what it is, but when you ask me, I don't." Assumingly enough, he is the man most responsible for the commonsensical idea of time that prevails in the West. The Greeks and East Indians thought of time as a circular process. Anyone looking at a watch will obviously see that time goes around, but the Hebrews and the Christians thought of time as something that goes in a straight line, and that is a powerful idea, which influences everybody living in the West today. We all have our various mythologies. When I use the word mythology or myth, I don't mean something that is false. I mean an idea or image by which people make sense of the world. The Western myth, under which our common sense has been nurtured over many centuries, is that the world began in the year 4000 BC. This myth is presented in the King James Bible, which descended from heaven with an angel in the year 1611. According to this myth, the Lord God naturally had existed forever and ever and ever through endless time. The world was created, and then it fell apart, and so in the middle of time, the second person of the Trinity incarnated himself in the form of Jesus Christ in order to save mankind and establish the true church. Sometime in the future, this time will come to an end. There will be a day that will be the last day, in which the second person of the Trinity, God the Son, will appear again in glory with his legions of angels, and the last judgment will be held. And those who are saved will live forever and ever in contemplation of the vision of the blessed Trinity, and those who do not behave themselves will squirm forever in hell. Time, according to this presentation, is unidirectional. Each event happens once, and it can never be repeated. According to St. Augustine, when God the Son came into this world, he sacrificed himself for the remission of all sins. This was an event that could happen once and only once. I don't know why he thought that, but he sure did think it. And so we have the idea that time is a unique story that had a definite beginning and is going to have a definite end, and that's that. Most Westerners do not believe in this story anymore, although many of them think that they ought to believe in it. But even though they don't believe it, they still retain from it a way of thinking, a linear view of time, that says that we are going down a one-way road. We will never again go back over the course that we have followed, and we hope, as we go on, that in time things will get progressively better and better. This version of time differs in a very strange and fascinating way from the view of time held by most other people in the world. Take the Hindu view of time. The Hindus are not so small-minded and provincial as to believe that the world was created as recently as 4000 BC. They calculate the ages of the universe in units of 4,320,000 years. That is their basic counting unit, and it is called a kalpa. And so their understanding of the world is quite different from ours. We in the West think of the world as an artifact made by a grand technician, the creator. But the Hindus do not think that the world was created at all. They look upon it as a drama, not having been created, but as being acted. They see God as the supreme actor, or as what is called the cosmic self, playing all the different parts simultaneously. In other words, you and the birds and the bees and flowers and rocks and stars are all an act put on by God, who is pretending to be all these things through the many eternities in order to amuse himself. He is pretending that he is all of us, and this is not, after all, such an unreasonable idea. If I were to ask you to consider what you would do if you were God, you might find that being omniscient, all-powerful, and eternal would eventually become extremely boring. Eventually you would want a surprise. What are we trying to do with our technology? We are trying to control the world. We are trying to become all-powerful and omniscient. Imagine the ultimate fulfillment of that desire. When we are in control of everything, and we have great panels of push buttons whereby the slightest touch fulfills every wish, what will we want them? We will eventually want to arrange to have a special red button marked "Surprise" built into the panel. Touch that button and what happens? We will suddenly disappear from our normal consciousness and find ourselves in a situation very much like the one we are now in, where we feel ourselves to be a little bit out of control, subject to surprises, and subject to the whims of an unpredictable universe. The Hindus figure that God presses the button every so often, that is to say for a period of 4,320,000 years. God knows who he is. And then he gets bored with that, and figures who he is for an equal forgets who he is for an equal period of 4,320,000 years. He goes to sleep and has a dream, and this dream is called a Manvantara. The period in which he wakes up and is not dreaming is called a pralaya, a state of total bliss. But when he has a dream, he manifests the world. This manifestation of the world is divided into 4 ages. They are named after the 4 throws in the Indian game of dice. The first throw is Krita, which is the throw of 4, the perfect throw. The Krita Yuga, or first age, lasts a very long time. In this period of the manifestation of the world, everything is absolutely delightful. It would be the same, for example, if you had the privilege of dreaming any dream you wanted to dream every night when you went to sleep. For at least a month, you would live out all your wishes and dreams. You would have banquets and music and everything that you ever thought you wanted. But then, after a few weeks of this, you would say, well, this is getting a little dull, let's have an adventure. Let's get into trouble. It's alright to get into trouble because you know you're going to wake up at the end of it, so you could fight dragons and rescue princesses and all that sort of thing. After a while, when that got boring, you could get more and more far out. You could arrange to forget that you were dreaming. You would believe you really were involved in danger, and what a surprise it would be when you woke up. And then one of those nights, when you were dreaming any dream you wanted to dream, you would even find yourself sitting where you are right now, with all your special problems and hang-ups, and reading and involvement, listening to these words. How do you know that that is not what is happening? So then, after the Krita Yuga, in which everything is perfect, there comes a somewhat shorter epoch, called the Treta Yuga, named after the throw of 3 in the Hindu game of dice. And in the Treta Yuga, things are a little bit less secure. When that epoch comes to an end, there comes the third, a shorter period called the Dvapara Yuga, named after the Dva, the throw of 2. In this period, the forces of good and evil are equally balanced. When that era comes to an end, there follows a still shorter period called the Kali Yuga. Kali means the throw of 1, or the worst throw, and in that period the forces of negation and destruction are finally triumphant. The Kali Yuga is supposed to have started shortly before 3000 BC. We have another 5,000 years of it to go. In this period everything falls apart, and things get worse and worse and worse, until finally at the end the Lord himself appears in the disguise of Kali, the Destroyer. Kali is black-bodied, has 4 arms, and wears a necklace of skulls. In one hand he holds a bloody sword. A second hand holds a severed head by the hair. A third hand is open, fingers extended forward in the boon-giving gesture. The fourth hand is also open, fingers pointing up, palm exposed in the gesture that means don't be afraid, everything is just a big act. Thereupon the entire cosmos is destroyed in fire, and every living soul the Lord wakes up again and discovers who he is, and abides for the pralaya of 4,320,000 years in a state of total bliss. This sequence of eras repeats forever. It is the in-breathing and the out-breathing of Brahma, the Supreme Self, and they add up into years of Brahma, each one of which is 360 kalpas. And these in turn add up again into centuries, and it goes on and on and on. But it never gets boring, because every time the new Manvantara starts, the Lord God forgets everything that happened before and becomes completely absorbed in the act, just as you did when you were born and you opened your eyes on the world for what you thought was the first time. And all the world was strange and wonderful. You saw it with the clear eyes of a child. Of course, as you get older, you get more used to things. You have seen the sun again and again, and you think it's just the same old sun. You have seen the trees until you regard them as the same old trees. And finally you begin to get bored, and you start to fall apart and disintegrate until you die, because you have had enough of it. But then after you die, another baby is born, who is of course you, because every baby calls itself I, and sees the whole thing from a new point of view again, and is perfectly thrilled. And so in this way, arranged wonderfully, so that there is never any absolutely intolerable boredom, the time goes on and on and on, and around and around and around. This Hindu myth is one of the great myths of time in the world, and we in our day and age need to consider this myth very seriously. As a highly technological civilization with enormous power over nature, we really need to consider time. Therefore let me ask again the question that was asked of St. Augustine: what is time? I'm not going to give you his answer. I know what time is, and when you ask me, I will tell you. Time is a measurement of energy, a measurement of motion. We have agreed internationally on the speed of the clock, so I want you to think about clocks and watches for a moment. We are, of course, slaves to them, and you will notice that your watch has a circular face and that it is calibrated. Each minute or second is marked by a hairline made as narrow as possible, while yet remaining visible. When we think of what we mean by the word now, we think of the shortest possible instant that is here and then gone immediately, because that thought corresponds with the image of the hairline calibrations on a watch. As a result, we are a people who feel that we don't have any present, because we believe that the present is always instantly vanishing. That is the problem of Goethe's Faust. He attains his great moment and says to it, "O still delay, thou art so fair." But the moment never stays. It is always disappearing into the past. Therefore we have the sensation that our lives are constantly flowing away from us, and so we have a sense of urgency. Time is not to waste, time is money. And so, because of the tyranny of clocks, we feel that we have a past, and that we know who we were in the past. Nobody can ever tell you who they are, they can only tell you who they were. And we believe we also have a future. And that belief is terribly important, because we have a naive hope that the future is somehow going to supply us with everything we're looking for. You see, if you live in a present that is so short that it is not really there at all, you will always feel vaguely frustrated. When you ask a person, "What did you do yesterday?" he will give you a historical account of a sequence of events. He will say, "I woke up at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I got up and made myself some coffee, and then I brushed my teeth and took a shower, got dressed, had some breakfast, and went down to the office." He gives you a historical outline of a course of events, and people really think that is what they did. But actually, that is only a very skeletal account of what they did. People live a much richer life than that, but they don't notice it. They only pay attention to a very small part of the information received through their five senses. They forget that when they got up in the morning and made some coffee, their eyes slid across the birds outside their window. They forgot about the light on the leaves of the tree, and that their nose played games with the scent of the coffee. They forget because they weren't aware of it, because they were in a hurry. They were engaged in consuming that coffee as fast as possible so that they could get to their office and do something they thought was terribly important. And maybe it was, in a certain way. It made money. But because they were so absorbed with the future, they had no use for the money they made. They couldn't enjoy it. Maybe they invested it so they could have a future in which something finally might happen to them, the something that they were looking for all along. But of course, it will never happen to them, because tomorrow never comes. The truth of the matter is that there is no such thing as time. Time is a hallucination. There is only today. There never will be anything except today. And if you do not know how to live today, you are demented. There is a great problem of Western civilization, of all civilizations. Civilization is a very complex system in which we use symbols, words, numbers, figures, concepts to represent the real world of nature. We use money to represent wealth. We use the clock to represent time. We use yards and inches to represent space. These are very useful measures, but you can always have too much of a good thing. You can easily confuse the measurement with what you are measuring, such as confusing money with wealth. It's like confusing the menu with dinner. You can become so enchanted with the symbols that you entirely confuse them with the reality. This is the disease from which almost all civilized people are suffering. We are therefore in the position of eating the menu instead of the dinner, of living in a world of words and symbols. This causes us to relate badly to our material surroundings. In the United States of America, as the most progressive country of the West, we are a great example of this. We are a people who believe ourselves to be the great materialists, and we are slightly ashamed of it. But this is an absolutely undeserved reputation. A materialist is a person who loves material and therefore reveres it, respects it, and enjoys it. We don't do that. We are a people who hate material. We are devoting ourselves to the abolition of its limitations. We want to abolish the limits of space and time. We want to get rid of space. We call it the conquest of space. We want to be able to get from San Francisco to New York and nothing flat. And when we are arranging to do just that. We do not realize what the result of doing that will be. San Francisco and New York will become the same place, and then it will not be worth going from one to another. When you want to go on vacation, you want to go to some place that's different. You might think of Hawaii, where you imagine sandy beaches, the lovely blue ocean, and coral reefs. But tourists are increasingly asking of such a place. Hasn't it been spoiled yet? By this they mean, is it exactly like Dallas yet? And the answer is yes. The faster you can get from Dallas to Honolulu, the faster Honolulu is becoming the same place as Dallas, and the less reason there is to make the trip. Tokyo has become the same place as Los Angeles. As you go faster and faster from place to place on the earth, they are all becoming the same place. That is the result of abolishing the limits of space and time. We are in a hurry about too many things. Going back to my account of someone's day, the person got up in the morning and made some coffee, and I suppose it was instant coffee, because that person was in too much of a hurry to be concerned with the preparation of a beautiful cup of coffee. Instant coffee is a punishment for people who are in too much of a hurry. This is true of everything that's instant. There is something phony and fake about it. Where were you rushing into the future? What did you think the future was going to bring you? Actually, you don't know. I've always thought it an excellent idea to assign freshmen in college the task of writing an essay on what they would like heaven to be. In other words, to make them think about what they really want in that abstraction, the future. Because the truth of the matter is, as I've already imitated, there is no such thing as the future. Time is an abstraction. So is money, for that matter. So are inches. Think about the Great Depression. One day everything was going fine. Everybody was pretty wealthy and had plenty to eat. And the next day, suddenly, everybody was in poverty. What happened? Had the farms disappeared? Had the cows vanished into thin air? Had the fish of the sea ceased to exist? Had human beings lost their energy, their skills, and their brains? No. This is what happened. On the morning after the beginning of the Depression, a carpenter came to work, and the foreman said to him, "Sorry, chum, you can't work today. There ain't no inches." The carpenter said, "What do you mean there ain't no inches?" "Yeah," the foreman said, "we got lumber, we got metal, but we ain't got no inches." "You're crazy," the carpenter said. And the foreman replied, "The trouble with you is you don't understand business." What happened in the Great Depression was that human beings confused money with wealth, and they didn't realize that money is a measure of wealth in exactly the same way that inches are a measure of length. They think it is something that is valuable in and of itself, and as a result of that they get into unbelievable trouble. In the same way, time is nothing but an abstract measure of motion, and we keep counting time. We have the sensation that time is running out, and we bug ourselves with this. Suppose you are working. Are you watching the clock? If you are, what are you waiting for? Time off. 5 o'clock. You can go home and have fun. What are you going to do when you get home? Have fun? Or are you going to watch TV, which is an electronic reproduction of life that doesn't even smell of anything, and eat a TV dinner, which is a kind of warmed over airline nastiness, until you just get tired and have to go to sleep? This is our problem, you see. We are not alive. We are not awake. We are not living in the present. Take education. What a hoax. As a child, you are sent to preschool, and in preschool they say you're getting ready to go to kindergarten, and then first grade is coming up, and second grade and third grade they say you are gradually climbing the ladder, making progress, and then when you get to the end of grade school they say you've been getting ready for high school, and then in high school they tell you you're getting ready for college, and in college you're getting ready to go into the business world with your suit and your diploma, and you go out to your first sales meeting and they say, now get out there and sell this stuff. They say you'll be going on up the ladder in business if you sell it, and maybe you'll get a promotion. And as you sell it, they up your quota. And then finally, at about the age of 45, you wake up one morning as vice president of your firm, and you say to yourself, I've arrived. But I've been cheated. Something's missing. I no longer have a future. Wrong, says the insurance salesman. I have a future for you. This policy will enable you to retire in comfort at 65, and now you can look forward to that. And you're delighted. You buy the policy, and at 65 you retire, thinking that this is the attainment of the goal of life. Except that now, you have prostate trouble, false teeth, and wrinkled skin, and you're a materialist, you're a phantom, you are an abstraction, you are nowhere because you were never told and you never realized that eternity is now. There is no time. What will you do then? Can you recover the pop of a champagne cork that popped last night? Can you hand me a copy of tomorrow's Dallas Morning Herald? It just isn't there. There is not time. Time is a fantasy. It is a useful fantasy, just as the lines of latitude and longitude are, but they aren't real lines. You are never going to tie up a package with the equator. It and time are the same. They're abstractions. Time is a convenience. It allows us to arrange to meet each other at the corner of Main and First at 4 o'clock. Great, but let us not be fooled by convenience. It's not real. People who live in the present have absolutely no use for making plans. People who believe in time and who believe that they are living for their future make plenty of plans. But when the plans mature and people are not there to enjoy them, they are busy planning something else, and they are like donkeys running after carrots that are hanging in front of their faces from sticks attached to their own collars. They are never here. They never get there. They are never alive. They are perpetually frustrated, and therefore they are always thinking. The future is the thing with them. Someday it is going to happen, they think, and because it never does, they are frantic. They want more time, please, more time. They are terrified of death because death stops the future, and so they never get there. Wherever there is always somewhere else around the corner. Please wake up. I'm not saying that you should be improvident, that you shouldn't have an insurance policy, that you shouldn't be concerned about how you are going to send your children to college. Except that there is no point in sending your children to college and providing for their future if you don't know how to live in the present, because all you will do is teach your children how not to live in the present. You will end up dragging yourself through life for the alleged belief of your own children, who will in turn drag out their lives in a boring way for the alleged benefit of their children. Everybody is looking after everybody else so beautifully that nobody has any fun at all. We say of a person who is insane that he is not all here. Not being all here is our collective disease. In the beginning of the regime of communism in Russia, they had 5-year plans, and everything was going to be great at the end of the 5-year plans, except that when they got to the end, they had to make another 5-year plan. They were making human beings into a floor on which the next generation would dance. But of course the next generation wouldn't be able to dance. It would have to become the floor for the generation after that, and so on. Each generation holds up the floor above it forever and ever, and nobody ever dances. But you see, the philosophy of the communists and our philosophy are exactly the same. In fact, our system is their system, and increasingly we and they are becoming more and more alike because of our misperception of the reality of time. We are obsessed with time. It is always coming. Mao Zedong can say to all the Chinese, live a great, boring life, and wear the same clothes, and carry around a little red book, and one day, perhaps, everything will be great. And we are here in exactly the same situation. We are the richest people in the world, and most of our businessmen go around in dark suits looking like undertakers. We eat Wonder Bread, which is styrofoam injected with some chemicals that are supposed to be nutritious. We don't even know how to eat. In other words, we live in the abstract, not in the concrete. We work for money, not for wealth. We look forward to the future and do not know how to enjoy today, and we are destroying our environment. We are Los Angelesing the world instead of civilizing it. We are turning the air into gas fumes and the water into poison. We are tearing the vegetation off the face of the hills. And for what? To print newspapers. In our colleges, we value the record of what has happened more than we value what is happening. The records in the registrar's office are kept in safes under lock and key, but not the books in the library. What you do is, of course, much more important than what you did. We don't understand this. We go out on a picnic and somebody says, "We are having a lovely time. What a pity somebody didn't bring a camera." People go on tours with wretched little boxes around their necks. Instead of being in the scene, whatever it is, they go click, click, click with those little boxes so that when they get home, they can show photographs to their friends and say, "See what happened? Of course, I wasn't really there, I was just photographing it." When the record becomes more important than the event, we are really up the creek with no paddle. So the most serious need of civilization is to come to now. Think of all the trouble we would save. Think of how peaceful things would become. We would not be interfering with everybody. We would not be doing everybody else good, like the general who destroyed a village in Vietnam for its own safety. That is the explanation he gave. "Kindly let me help you, or you will drown," said the monkey, putting the fish safely up the tree. Now is the meaning of eternal life. Jesus said, "Before Abraham was, I am." He didn't say, "I was." He said, "I am." And to come to this, to know that you are, and there is no time except the present, is to suddenly attain a sense of reality. The aim of education ought to be to teach people to live in the present, to be all here. Instead, our education system is pretty abstract. It neglects the absolute fundamentals of life, and instead teaches us to be bureaucrats, bank clerks, accountants, and insurance salesmen. It entirely neglects our relationships to the material world, of which there are 5: farming, cooking, clothing, housing, and love-making. These are grossly overlooked, and so it becomes possible for the Congress of the United States to pass a law making it a grave penalty for anyone to burn the flag. Yet those same congressmen, by acts of commission or omission, are responsible for burning up what the flag stands for, and for the erosion of the natural resources of this land. Although they say they love their country, they don't. Their country is a reality. They love their flag, which is an abstraction. So I think it is time to get back to reality, to get back from time to eternity, to get back to the eternal now, which is what we have, always have had, and indeed always will have.